Guys, thank you for watching. Let us move on to the Romans chapter 4. First one, what shall we say then that Abraham our father as pertaining to the flesh had found? For if Abraham were justified by works, he had whereof to glory, but not before God. Pertaining to the flesh means it's like flesh is like the law. How it's the work is I think I got to explain the position here. I think Paul's is trying to explain uh, the position of Jesus and the law and the Torah, and why Jesus is the fulfillment of the Torah. And then he proceeded on to say, he said that uh, Torah, like the law, is actually the father of Jesus' flesh. So the work of the law is actually the work of flesh, but it's specifically saying that because it is not a complete work, because the completion is also the spirit. It's also things that are not of this world. So Torah is something that is only of this earth. So that's the terminology that he used. That the work of the flesh is the law is related to the law. So every time we see the word flesh here, we know that it is about the works of the law, and also the word works, right? It's also related to doing the Torah. For if Abraham were justified by works, he had whereof to glory, but not before God. For what saith the scripture? Abraham believed God, and it was counted unto him for righteousness. So it's not by works. Now to him that work is the reward not reckoned of grace, but of debt. Okay, and we know that it said that this debt is being paid by Jesus on the cross. But to him that worked not, but believe on him that justified the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. So what he I think he's also talking about how through faith you got all the things you wanted to get by doing the law, and that faith in Jesus is the completion of doing the law. Doing the law is not enough. You got to have faith in Jesus, and by having faith in Jesus and doing that and manifesting into your life by not by doing, obviously, and also believing, and also in thinking, um, as a result of your faith, you will fulfill all the standards, right? Because a law is a standard that needs to be fulfilled. Automatically, you will fulfill the standards, but you could check back to the standard, like an accountant, right? Referring to the accounting standard, you could always check back to the standard in order to check your conduct, whether your conduct is good or not. But you always have this ultimate equation in this mind. Let's that assets plus liability equals equity. That is in your heart. Therefore, you would know, even the law, guys. Even the law is not going to get sometimes interpreted wrong. So you gotta have this in your heart. And I think this asset plus liability equals equity is faith in Jesus, if I would say so. Okay. But to him that worked not, but believed on him that justified the ungodly, his faith is counted for righteousness. Even as David also described the blessedness of the man unto whom God imputed righteousness without works. The, Even as David also described the blessedness of the man unto whom God imputed righteousness without works, saying, Blessed are they whose iniquities are forgiven and whose sins are covered. Blessed is the man to whom the Lord will not impute sin. Come this blessedness upon the circumcision only, or upon this uncircumcision also? for we say that faith was reckoned to Abraham for righteousness. So David is already talking about salvation beyond just um, beyond beyond just obeying the law. But of course, the law points to the sin. Like we know it is sinful because it is written in the law. But this this but if you sin, David talk about this. Blessed are you who are forgiven. Now, if you are forgiven, right? Is it exclusive to those who know the Torah? Is it exclusive that you should know the Torah first and then when you sin you are forgiven, then you fall into this category? So Paul is saying like it's why where does that came from, right? If you anyone who sin and be forgiven would fall into this category, right? Okay, and come this blessedness then upon the circumcision only, or upon the uncircumcision also? For we say that faith has reckoned to Abraham for righteousness. So then Paul is going to explain how salvation is not through the law, how the promise is not through the law for Abraham. How was it then reckoned when he was in circumcision or in uncircumcision? Not in circumcision, but in uncircumcision. And he received the sign of circumcision, a seal of righteousness of the faith which he had yet been uncircumcised. So he received the promise before he was circumcised, right? That he might be the father of all them that believe, though they be not circumcised, that righteousness might be imputed unto them also. So there is a reason why God gave him a promise before he was circumcised, which is also to include those who are not circumcised um, into his promise, right? But still, guys, through Abraham, okay, through Abraham. Why? Because of Jesus. Uh, but this is his argument. I think the audience here is actually Jewish people who is kind of debating or discussing whether or not how to treat the Gentiles here, because at the time, Torah is the answer, right? And people who are non-Jewish don't have the answer, therefore they are not the promised people. The way to look at it as in a point of view of Christians is that the promise is Jesus. So after Jesus, everything is done and the promise has been fulfilled, and the hierarchy will change, even though we are still honoring the Jews for being the one who received the promise and carried the promise. It is like I have said this in my different video. It is like you respect the researcher who found the answer, um, and let's say the cure for a disease, right? It doesn't change the fact that everybody else could be healed from the disease, and doctors could come in different races, different backgrounds, and they have contribution to your healing as well. But as someone who has the royalty, right? He has the royalty, okay? But it doesn't mean that he is higher than everybody else, and he's like, but it's just the way, it's like the respect, right? It's like the truth of the matter is, the truth of the matter is this. Let's not go too deep into my mind. Let's focus on what Paul is saying here. And the father of circumcision to them who are not of the circumcision only, but who also walk in the steps of that faith of our father Abraham. Excuse my mucus here, I want to clear it first. Steps of that faith of our father Abraham, which he had being yet uncircumcised. For the promise that he should be the heir of the world was not to Abraham or to his seed through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. Okay, guys, so the heir of the world was Abraham and was to his seed, but not through the law, but through the righteousness of faith. For if they which are of the law be heirs, faith is made void, and the promise made of none effect. Because the law work wrath, for where no law is, there is no transgression. Okay, in this part, we divided we divided into two, I think, in order to understand it. The first part is that uh, because Abraham was faithful and it was counted to him as righteousness by God, and God will give him the promise because of his faith, right? It would be pointless to say that the righteousness come through the observing of the law or the works, right? Because then you would nullify what happened to Abraham initially, that he actually receive not the Torah, receive the promise, not because of the Torah, but because of his faith. So faith is that powerful. It is that powerful. You would, like, people of the past, Jewish people of the past would refer to Torah as the Torah. How do I say this? This is where Torah is up there. But what Paul is trying to say here is that faith is up there. Faith is up there too. And it's even supersede the Torah. And even that is what Torah is about. But we haven't seen, but before Jesus, people haven't seen the full form of it. Therefore, they refer to Torah. But actually, it's faith. But to who? Faith to who? Faith to Jesus, and that is the answer, and that is the completion. And it is this is where it is explained. This is why that is the case. All the whole explanation here, okay? Because the law worked wrath, for where no law is, there is no transgression. So you're with knowledge come responsibility, right? If you know the law, you would know sin, and therefore, when you sin, you are guilty, and that is a condemnation. Therefore, it is, but still, I am just a point of view. You gotta get some other point of view as well, especially in your life, in order to triangulate the answer. Okay, um, I'm trying to give my perspective to help you out, but I am not trying to give you the whole complete thing. You gotta, right? Please, I don't want to talk to people like Nazi who say, "Oh, this is what Hitler said. It's all what Hitler said." No, you are guilty for doing that. Have some sense of responsibility. Have humanity. Be a human being. I want to rely you as a responsible human being. And if you are not one of them, I am not talking to you. I am not pondering to you. I'm not trying to fulfill your standard or your need. That's a dead end. Be someone who have nuance, who have sense of responsibility, who have discretion, and like, how do I say this? If the law say this, if the law prescribe this, it has a purpose, and and you have justice in your heart, and when it plays out in reality, what's your sense of responsibility? Of course, you're going to rely on the law. You're going to shelter on the law. That is not bad, but I don't know, just have some nuance. I don't know how to explain it, and it's useless if I it's useless if I ponder to you who don't want to take that responsibility. And then, therefore, it is of faith that it might be by grace to the end the promise might be sure to all the seed, not to that only which is of the law, but to that also which is of the faith of Abraham, who is the father of us all. As it is written, I have made thee a father of many nations, not just the Jews, before him whom he believed, even God, who quickened the dead, and called those things which be not as though they were. Is this talking about resurrection here? I just noticed something here. Before him whom he believed, even God, who quickened the dead. I think the grammar here is a little bit difficult because of the past. Um, I could be wrong about this, but excuse me. Who against hope believed in hope that he might become the father of many nations? According to that which was spoken, so shall thy seed be. And being not weak in faith, he considered not his own body now dead, when he was about 100 years old, neither yet the deadness of Sarah's womb. He staggered not at the promise of God through unbelief, but was strong in faith, giving glory to God. So this is his righteousness here. This is Abraham's righteousness. But what is this? Rome 4, verse 17. What is this? As it is written, I have made thee a father of many nations, before him whom he believed, even God. Before him whom he believed. Quickened the dead, and called those things which be not as though they were. Who against hope believe in hope. Who God he believed in God who raised the dead? I think that's what it's saying here. Okay. And being not weak in faith, he considered not his own body, and he staggered not at the promise of God, and being fully persuaded. Okay, we are here now, Rome 4:21, and being fully persuaded that what he had promised, he was able to also to perform. So what he do, this is a performance here. It's a little bit like the work, but what he is performing is his faith, and therefore it was imputed to him for righteousness. Now it was not written for his sake alone that it was imputed to him, not because he's Abraham, but there is a bigger plan behind that. But for us also, to whom it shall be imputed, if we believe on him that raised up Jesus our Lord from the dead, who was delivered for our offenses, and was raised again for our justification. Okay, so I think the nuance here is what is how things are different in the past, right? In the past, there's this issue of what we now would say racism, right? They would say, okay, Jewish people came first, therefore there's no salvation aside from the Torah. Therefore, when it comes to the Gentiles, right, you gotta you gotta get the salvation from Jewish people. That is like, I don't know the implication of that. If you propagate it forward, if you scale that up, probably the Jewish are become would become the Pope, and would be the kind of Pope that gives forgiveness of sin, and that is where the only forgiveness of sin would came from. What Thank God, what we do now as Christians is just to pray to God and ask for forgiveness and have faith and do our faith. Therefore, we would not sin again. But I think that's the danger that is what Paul was trying to address here, is that there's this inclination that Jewish people want to be like popes of Christianity, or maybe those who are not Christian uh, don't want to admit the Gentiles to be equal to Adam's seed or something like that. But what Paul is trying to say, no, don't don't be like that. Don't be like that. It is wrong, and he gave a whole explanation, a whole Roman. He's talking in his epistles and everything. In this one in particular, Romans chapter 4, to show the Jews how Abraham is actually like a Gentile. He doesn't have Torah with him, but God counted him for salvation. Now, if you consider Abraham as your father, your great father, then you should consider the Gentiles to be one of those people like Abraham also, right? And I think we would related to this, we would remember the Greek woman whose daughter is possessed by demons. I just read this, and then after that, he asked Jesus for his miracle, and Jesus said, uh, "I come only to the lost sheep of Israel, and therefore it is not it is not proper, it's not meet to give the bread that is for the children and toss it into dogs." And what because we read what Paul said here, it the meaning is not the most neurotic meaning as possible, guys. No, it is not that. The We should imagine the scenario, right? We should imagine the setting here. Um, he actually paused when the Greek woman begged him to heal the daughter. He paused for a long time. It gives the time for the woman to beg to his disciples. And he was thinking, I think. He was thinking, and then he said, "It is not fair to toss the bread that is for the children to the dogs." And if you I try to understand the situation, and this is what I got, right? He when he's in this world, his duty is for Israel. He's not going out of Israel. I think people already said this before. And then the problem is when the Greek woman who is not in his duty, who is in the scope of his duty, try to receive some blessing also, it is a problem. So this is where we got an example from Jesus himself, how to refer to the law, how to refer to order. You don't, even though it seems like it's a good thing to do, but it seems like it's a good thing to do to just give, give, and give. It it is not that simple because of your duty. It is because of your discipline. It is because of the you should consider discipline high above there. You should consider, yeah, that is about as far as I could convey without making too much of a mistake. Okay, so Jesus was being disciplined here, and it's like and said, you know what, I it's hard to do this without breaking the discipline, and he's trying to figure this out. I think he's trying to figure this out. I think he got a little bit of difficulty him here. I know that he is God, and it's supposed to be seamless for him, but I don't know what's happening in God's mind. But it seems like it is not an easy thing. Let's just take it like that. It is not something easy for him to say this. What he was saying is that in order for me to be able to do this, okay, you got to work with me, dude. You got to work with me, okay? If I say your this blessing is for the children of Israel and you are children of another country, there's no hope for you. This is not for you. End of story. If I say that this blessing is for the children of Israel, the lost sheep of the children of Israel, and you are a slave, this could be a precedent to make all the Gentiles slaves to the Jews. So work with me, guys, okay? I'm going to do work with me, dude. Here, I'm going to do a hyperbole, okay? Get this first. Think about this, okay? This is a hyperbole, okay? I'm going dogs. Dogs. And then the woman responded, guys. The woman responded, and she said, dogs would get the crumbs from the children out of the children's table. So the dogs here is a part of the family. Okay? It's just the discipline that he came for initially. For us to question that, that's a whole another conversation. Why is God being sent only to the Jews at the time of his life, and then to the whole world after he has done his work. That is another another type of long explanation. I think I've heard it in the church. They really they really put it in a presentation that is complex but beautiful. Probably you can find it somewhere. So that is the answer right there. Hopefully you can put it all and piece it all together, and it would make sense to you, and you would triangulate things, and you would get even more answers, upon which you probably would want to give a comment in this video, and so that I could know it also. And thank you very much, and goodbye.